Stone Cold, the Hellraiser is back!
Here we go! Evolution of the Shield!
John Cena versus the Showstopper!
Hulk Hogan and The Rock in the same ring!
You will never take my place at the head of the table!
Undertaker! On the Hell's Gate submission! Oh my God! What?
My God, Michaels! Just kick Cena's head off!
The Monday Night Wars have come to WrestleMania!
It'll be The Rock! It'll be Austin one-on-one!
Third and five to the Undertaker!
Do you believe in miracles?
The streak is over!
Hey, what's going on, guys, and welcome back to WWE Retro on the WWE podcast on this Friday, June 9th, and it's actually my brother's birthday, so a happy 17th birthday to my brother James, although I really doubt that he's listening to this right now. He is not a wrestling fan, and as a 17-year-old, as we all remember, I'm sure, we had better things to do on a Friday evening or Saturday morning, whatever time you're listening to this, than listening to a wrestling podcast. But that's not why we're here. We're here to go back in time for WWE Retro. And as I spoke about earlier this week on the current state of WWE with Matt, we are going to go cover The Rock's time as the WCW Champion in 2001. So obviously this was a very big time in wrestling. It was a very transitional period in the WWF at that point in time. I almost said WWE, but there was a very big transition to the WWF into the invasion angle. Some of it good, some of it bad, but I really do think The Rock's run as the WCW champion was one of the positive standouts. But what led to this run? What led to The Rock's involvement in the invasion angle? Well, as we all remember infamously, the Stone Cold Steve Austin heel turn at WrestleMania 17 in April of 2001, aligning himself with Vince McMahon, and really kind of indirectly kickstarting The Rock's kind of path to the WCW Championship. Because The Rock goes into WrestleMania 17 as WWF Champion, loses to Stone Cold Steve Austin, with the help of Vince McMahon. The following night on Monday Night Raw, he gets a rematch inside a steel cage. Triple H gets involved. The two-man power trip is born, and Austin, Triple H, and McMahon beat the living holy hell out of The Rock. Austin retains the WWF Championship, and The Rock is subsequently suspended indefinitely by Vince McMahon. Now, obviously, this was in storyline. In real life, The Rock went away for 4 months to film The Scorpion King, the spin-off of The Mummy Returns. And The Scorpion King, coincidentally, was the first ever lead acting role The Rock ever had. So it's kind of weird to go back and look at a period in time when The Rock was just dipping his toe into the acting scene. Obviously, his first role was in The Mummy Returns, and then his first lead role in the spin-off The Scorpion King. So we obviously have the invasion angle start without The Rock there. We have the invasion pay-per-view where they doubled down on the Steve Austin heel turn as he turns on Team WWF and aligns himself with WCW and the Alliance. But Austin was the WWF champion, and Booker T was the WCW champion. So the Alliance had both world titles on their side. And, you know, this was the first point in time where we were seeing two world championships coexisting on the same television program in the same company. Because obviously nowadays, the last 20 years or so, for the most part, and just reintroduced in a few weeks ago, we've been used to two world champions at all times, one on Raw, one on SmackDown. But there was no brand split prior to the invasion angle, so we were not used to seeing two world championships, and it felt even more so significant that now with Austin's turning his back on the WWF, it was having both world titles on one side of the aisle. Following Invasion and Austin's heel turn, we're doubling down on his heel turn 2.0, however you want to phrase it. We have Vince McMahon come out and make a major announcement on Monday Night Raw that he is lifting the suspension of The Rock. And in a week's time, The Rock would make his return to the WWF on Monday Night Raw. So now obviously this was interesting because the last time we saw The Rock, it was Vince McMahon screwing him not once, but twice in consecutive nights to screw the Rock out of the WWF Championship to help Stone Cold Steve Austin. And now Vince is presumably bringing back The Rock to help him fight against Stone Cold Steve Austin. So nobody knew where The Rock's loyalties would lie. And that is why when The Rock came out, he was going to be coerced by Shane McMahon, the leader of the Alliance, and Vince McMahon, the leader of the WWF. And it got very hostile very quick, as there was not a lot of love lost between Vince and The Rock and Shane and The Rock.
Listen to the voice of reason. Listen to the voice of experience. Give the people what they want. The Rock has joined the Alliance. Oh my God. Let this moment share. Let this moment for the rest of your life. I cannot believe this. This is the worst thing that could happen to the WWF. Smile on the Rock's face. I can't believe this. Shane McMahon. The Rock has been born. Vince and Shane McMahon. But what is his decision? What is the Rock's decision? Is the Rock with the WWF or is the Rock with the Alliance? Look at the damage done by the People's Champion. What side will the Rock choose? It's the most electrifying move in sports entertainment. The People's Elbow. Shane McMahon. Okay, but which side does the Rock pick? I have no idea. Both McMahon nails are running through the ring. Finally, The Rock has come back to the WWE. Yes, yes, The Rock has come home. This is the
So obviously a massive, massive decision by The Rock. He lays out Vince with the rock bottom, Shane celebrating, running around the ring in classic Shane McMahon fashion, and then he gets hit with the rock bottom after The Rock makes believe to shake his hand, hits him with a people's elbow, and then gives us the answer that everyone was clamoring for. And right then and there, the WWF has their new leader and the perfect guy to step up to Stone Cold Steve Austin. Or so we thought. Everyone thought, why wouldn't you rekindle the rivalry that was shelved not 4 months prior? The rivalry that had headlined 2 of the last 3 WrestleManias. The 2 biggest stars that professional wrestling had to offer at that time. But Stone Cold Steve Austin was doing his own thing. He was feuding with Kurt Angle over the WWF Championship. And that's what led to The Rock meeting Booker T for the first time on SmackDown. And this was a match that I don't think many people were thinking about, but they quickly realized it was a match that we didn't know that we may have wanted.
Hold on 1 second, Rock. promotion. Oh, hell no. You're not in the man's league. More importantly, you're not in my league. In fact, you look at her walk down there right now and kick your pretty ass up. In the blue hell are you? Who am I? Who am I? I'm the WCW Champion, sucker. Just so The Rock understands this, you're the WCW Champion, sucker. What's more important, The Rock doesn't believe he caught your name. What's my name? Hell, my name is Booker. It doesn't matter what your name is. Well, I'll tell you what, it should matter, because I came out here tonight to challenge your punk ass to a match at SummerSlam. What do you think about that, Rocky? You're going to SummerSlam? Oh yeah, I'll be there. What are you going to be there for? What, does somebody need to park their car outside the building? You didn't say that. Tell me you did not just say that. Oh, The Rock did say that. And The Rock says this. You want to come out here and run your mouth at The Rock on The Rock Show SmackDown? Well, The Rock says this. Booker C, Booker G, T, hell, it doesn't matter what your name is. Why don't you walk down the ramp? We don't wait for SummerSlam. The Rock will whip your candy ass all over Washington, D.C.
So The Rock basically does his greatest hits on Booker T. But you heard it. It led to a match at SummerSlam. But on the way, you know, The Rock also had a lot of clashes with Shane McMahon. The following night on Monday Night Raw, they would have a street fight on Monday to headline the show. And honestly, Shane McMahon and The Rock had really good chemistry. You know, going back to the time with the corporation, then the McMahon-Helmsley regime. Shane was always a good foil for The Rock. I found the chemistry between the two really lended itself to comedy. I remember the beginning of that match. The Rock comes to the ring and he's like doing his like entrance, and Shane's dancing in the ring with a kendo stick, spinning it, and it pops out of his hand, and then like he starts running. It was so good. But Shane became the manager for Booker T. So it really did become almost The Rock versus Booker T and Shane. And when we got to SummerSlam, Shane was ringside, and Shane was right in the thick of things, causing a lot of problems for The Rock. But this was, again, a major, major show because it's the first ever pay-per-view where you had two world titles defended. Austin and Kurt Angle on one side for the WWF Championship, and The Rock challenging for the WCW title, the first ever non-world title that The Rock would be challenging for. And this is when we first got to see The Rock as the WCW Champion. So I remember watching this live and how iconic that finish was, where he hits The Rock with a scissors kick, then does the spin-a-rooney and starts hopping around on one leg. The Rock kicks up, hits him with a rock bottom, and 1, 2, 3. But as you heard at the end of that broadcast, at the end of that clip, Paul Heyman said Booker T was distracted by the APA's interference on Shane McMahon on the outside, and that's exactly what happened. They cornered Shane, and Bradshaw absolutely destroyed him with a clothesline from hell, which took Shane McMahon out of the equation. But Shane McMahon would be anything but out of the equation going forward, as he and The Rock's problems would push forth, and he would directly involve himself with the WCW Championship and The Rock versus Booker T. As at the following pay-per-view, Unforgiven 2001, The Rock would defend the WCW Championship against Shane McMahon and Booker T in a handicap match. And this was pretty interesting, right? Because you had now Shane McMahon, who had always been an exterior element, always lingering on the outside as the manager to Booker T, directly involved, and what kind of dynamic would that prove to have even between Booker T and Shane, as whoever scored the pinfall would win the WCW Championship. And before we go a bit deeper at that match, one thing that was very significant about The Rock's victory for the WCW Championship at SummerSlam, it main evented. It went on last, as opposed to Austin and Angle for the WWF Championship. So unless I'm mistaken, it was the first ever SummerSlam that was main evented with a title other than the WWF Championship, and maybe the first ever pay-per-view that was main evented for a championship other than the WWF Championship. So we get to Unforgiven, The Rock set to defend his title against Booker T and Shane McMahon. as he hopes to hang on to the WCW Championship.
Hideous job giving all referees a bad name. I agree. Mike Chioda's a horrible referee. The man should be fired immediately. This is over. This match is over. I cannot believe. What in the hell is that? Mike Chioda, a referee, pulling Shane O'Mac out of the ring. What the hell is that? It may not be fair. It's a little thing to do. And Pepper trying to make excuses for Booker T's on the play. Pepper back in the ring. The Rock can't do it. He does. Good grief. The Rock somehow, someone in the pick it up. The kill, taking out Patrick. And Booker T taking out referee Chioda. Good dogs almighty. The carnage here. And Booker T setting up the Rock for the bookend. The bookend. The bookend. Here it is. The Rock fighting out of the bookend. And there's a ring. A Rock bottom. There's no referee to count. Wait a minute. There is a referee. Doing the right thing. Counting down Booker T after the Rock delivered a hellacious Rock bottom. Man, what a matchup that was. We have referees down. Shane O'Mac down. The Rock is hurt for certain. And Booker T rolling out of the ring still a five-time former WCW champion. Now you tell me what in the hell has no doing.
Heyman and Jim Ross, what a combo. And obviously you heard a big part of the dynamic in that match was the referees, and that was a big part they brought in. Like what was his name? Nick Patrick was the heel WCW referee, always trying to help the WCW guys win. Mike Chioda gets involved and pulls Shane McMahon out of the cover, and then him and Patrick get into it. Booker T knocks Chioda out, and then Earl Hebner comes in to make the final count. But this would really turn the page for The Rock, and he would move on from Booker T. And this is where you would see The Rock really do some cool things as the WCW champion. For one, a really under-the-radar match that he never really talked about, or that isn't really talked about, happened on Monday Night Raw. He fought Rob Van Dam defending the WCW Championship. A really, really good match. A match that was orchestrated by the on-screen owner of ECW, Stephanie McMahon Helmsley. Him and Chris Jericho, great on-screen chemistry, making fun of Stephanie McMahon. The flotation devices, if you guys know what I'm talking about. And then speaking of Jericho, him and Jericho would actually trade that WCW championship. They were both fighting on the same side of WWF, but they had so many differences that caused a feud between the two. And The Rock would actually lose the WCW championship to Chris Jericho at No Mercy, only to regain it a month later on Monday Night Raw ahead of Survivor Series. And in between that stretch, him and Jericho would actually win the World Tag Team Championships together while Jericho was the WCW champion. So that was another part. Like, The Rock was a two-time WCW champion as he dropped it for Jericho for just about a month span. You would also get to see him and Austin kind of crossing paths around this time, because Austin traded the WWF Championship with Kurt Angle at that very same pay-per-view, Unforgiven 2001. Very underrated pay-per-view. I'd suggest you guys go back and watch it. Angle would win the WWF Championship only to drop it back to Austin a few weeks later. So when Austin and Rock both regained their respective world titles, The Rock as the head of WWF holding the WCW Championship, and the opposite for Austin, head of WCW holding the WWF Championship, you got to see them start to have some more interactions after 6 months of being primarily kept apart. Obviously, the infamous singing of them or sharing the beer in the middle of the ring. Like, it was really cool to see. But obviously, this entire invasion angle would culminate at the Survivor Series pay-per-view in the winner-take-all match, where you had The Rock Undertaker, Kane, Big Show, and Jericho go up against Shane McMahon, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Booker T, Kurt Angle, who had recently defected to the Alliance, and Rob Van Dam. And very apropos, it would come down to the WWF champion, Austin, versus the WCW champion, Rock, as the final two survivors for each of their teams. And how it would unfold would arguably be The Rock's biggest moment as WCW champion. So the swerve to end the show and the second swerve of the match, where after Jericho got eliminated, he attacked The Rock, who was on his side, and hit him with a face buster. So he flips, and then to end the pay-per-view, Angle flips and helps the WWF secure the victory. And then the following night on Monday Night Raw, you get the double turn of Angle immediately becoming the heel, Austin immediately going back to babyface, and all was right in the world. But technically, this would be The Rock's last match, or last appearance rather, last night, last show, however you want to phrase it, as WCW champion, because after this pay-per-view, then WCW was dissolved, for lack of better words. It would go on to be known as the World Championship for at least one more month, or for one more month, I should say, until it was unified with the WWF Championship at, what was the pay-per-view? It wasn't Armageddon. They renamed it Vengeance. It was Vengeance in December of 2001, where Chris Jericho would defeat The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin in the same night to become the first ever undisputed champion. But all in all, The Rock had a very memorable, I would say, 4-month run as WCW champion, holding it on 2 separate occasions with victories over Booker T twice, Shane McMahon in there as well, Rob Van Dam, Chris Jericho, and obviously not in a title match, but against Stone Cold Steve Austin, defeating him and being the lone survivor in the winner-take-all 5-on-5 traditional Survivor Series match, and securing the victory for the WWF champion, or just for the WWF as a company. And after this, The Rock wouldn't hold a world title until June of 2002, when he would win the Undisputed Championship, and then it would be a full decade plus until he would win his final WWE Championship in early 2013. But honestly, a very memorable run for The Rock as WCW champion in mid to late 2001, and something that isn't talked about enough, so I felt the need to cover it tonight. And as you guys know, I'm a massive Rock mark, so you wouldn't expect anything else, right? Or anything less, I should say. Anyway, guys, that's all I got for you tonight. I hope you enjoyed this coverage of The Rock's run as WCW champion. As always, you can get me on Twitter at ADamarco25. You can get Matt on Twitter at Wrestling_audio, or you can email him each and every week for the WWE podcast mailbag. Anyway, guys, have a good weekend. I will talk to you next week.
Thanks for listening to the WWE Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss a show, or head to WWEpodcast.com. And for all of these shows ad-free, head over to patreon.com/WWE Podcast. Until then, we'll see you next time.